Welcome to the Sober Edge podcast, inspiration for alcohol-free living. I'm your host, Terry Patterson, functional nutritionist and This Naked Mind senior coach. The Sober Edge is a place to explore the infinite possibilities on the other side of drinking. In a culture soaked in booze, discover the wonder and joy of taking a different path. Meet real people living lives of purpose and passion, learn the truth behind the alcohol myths, and get ready to be motivated, inspired, and astounded by what is possible with the Sober Edge. Hey, you are in for a treat today. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Sober Edge podcast. So last week, I shared an episode with 3 of my fellow coaches, but really just 3 of our fellow humans. And I really wanted to highlight this journey from drinking and over drinking to this beautiful life that we find on the other side of alcohol. And so, what I wanted to share is that this is part 2. I had so many lovely ladies that I wanted to share their stories with you. And so today you're going to meet Colleen, you're going to meet Debbie, and you're going to meet Madonna. And I think that there will be many points of connection between their story and perhaps your story, because the truth is that we don't come to this place of living this incredible, joy-filled, powerful experience of life on the other side of drinking because we're special. In fact, the reason we get here is because there's nothing special about us. This is the process that on the other side, when we stop numbing out, when we stop using alcohol and we start showing up for our own life, we start to trust ourselves. We start to build a new life. We start to pay attention to what lights us up. We start to strategize and put into place powerful tools that help us when tough things happen. And, you're going to hear some tough things for each of these 3 ladies. And it doesn't mean that their life is now perfect. It means that removing alcohol was the space that created the opportunity to do that deeper work. And I just am so passionate about sharing this with you because I truly believe 2 things. 1, you deserve support if you are in this place of drinking more than you want to, and maybe feeling a little beaten up by stopping and starting and stopping and starting. And 2, I want to support you at all these stages of your journey because I have learned the importance of having community through this process. And so if you are in the beginning of your journey, I would love to connect with you. And if you are on the other side of becoming alcohol free, but you're looking and longing for more, I want to connect with you. This is my passion. I feel so blessed to be able to do this work. And so reach out, let me know where you're at. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you want to hear more stories like the ones that I'm going to share today or the ones from the first episode. So this is part 2, from gray area drinking to gray haired living. Enjoy. Okay, so my listeners, you are in for a treat because I'm going to welcome another friend and fellow colleague coach who has also learned how to stop drinking in her 50s and beyond and embrace the beauty of this alcohol-free life. So I want to welcome Madonna Commons to the podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
Thanks, Terry. I'm excited that you're doing this.
Oh, yeah. It's been so fun to catch up with some of the coaches that I've spent time with in the past, but also to just really understand that this journey we've been on to stop drinking isn't because we are extraordinary. In fact, it's because we are ordinary. And so I would love if you would tell us how old you were when you stopped drinking.
53, 54-ish.
Yeah. And I stopped at 55. And so that is, it's such a great reminder that it's not too late to change. We hold on to those old sayings like, oh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. But the reality is that we're constantly learning new things and we can change our thoughts. We can embrace new ideas and we really can rebel against the cultural messaging around alcohol. And I know you, Madonna, as you identify as a bit of a rebel. So tell us how not drinking has kind of brought that rebel tendency to the forefront.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to underline what you said, which is like it's absolutely never too late. It's shocking to me in the most amazing way how the last 3 years I have just become so much happier, so much healthier, so much more capable. So my life is so much more meaningful. I have felt more moments of pure joy than I think I felt maybe in my whole life combined. And I think people would have said I was doing just fine beforehand. So yeah, the rebel thing it is part of my life. And I rebelled in really weird ways. I didn't drink as a teenager. I didn't drink in college. I didn't drink or do drugs in my 20s. I did a lot of other stuff, but not that. I started maybe drinking in my 30s and really, became a professional in my 40s as sort of work stress and life stress ramped up. I really learned to harness the joy of being a rebel again, which is like, yeah, just don't drink alcohol. Because guess what? It's like terrible for you. It's bad for your anxiety, your skin, your health. You're like, it's just so kind of fun for me to be not in the mainstream. I don't want to be in the mainstream when the mainstream is, wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such a great point and a great reminder that we can embrace this identity around the change that we want. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that you and I, as coaches, get to help people take a deeper look at what is this identity? Is it about a health journey? Is it I used to drink? Is it a big take that big alcohol and so it really is exciting to hear you describe that because we all have different backgrounds, but this what you highlight so beautifully is that this change is astounding for all of us that are on the other side of drinking. And I know that sometimes we can white knuckle our way through. And I think one of the things that my heart really goes out to someone who feels, I call it sober but stuck.
Mm.
And so I think it's really powerful to think about how are we designing this life after alcohol? So I'm curious, Madonna, what were your biggest fears about letting go of drinking?
My biggest fears, what were all kind of centered around that there's just something fundamentally wrong with me,
Mm.
that I'm a bad person and that I can't face myself because then I just have to come to grips with the fact that I'm just this terrible person. And I mean, I just laugh because now it just seems like I feel such empathy for that version of me. And it's just like, it's also just ludicrous. Like, there's nothing wrong with me, and there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with anybody. Like, at our essence, we all have goodness. And it's not so much finding myself as it was finding that essence where I know that I'm good and I can operate out of that. So I was just afraid that I would stop drinking and I would just kind of like be like, well, I'm just terrible. And I guess now I have to deal with that. I had less fear of how people would perceive me.
Mhm.
Um, in fact, my joke is, but it is true. I had a little bit harder time telling people I was going to become a life coach than I did telling people that I didn't drink alcohol anymore because I had stuff around that. Um, I had just fear that I just wasn't going to be able to do it or that I had some horrible disease that was incurable.
Yeah.
And it turns out, no, not the case.
Yeah, that was me. I was afraid I was signing up for a life of misery.
Yeah.
And I knew I was miserable drinking, and I thought I would be miserable not drinking. And it took me a long time to say, well, do I want to say stuck in the, what do they call it? The devil you know, the devil you don't know. And so I was really in this place of, well, what if it's bad? And then I thought, I finally let myself off the hook one day and I said, if I hate it, I guess I could start drinking again.
Yeah. I
And
think I think, the other one, if I like go super deep, is I definitely had a fear if I came out and said I can't drink alcohol anymore, it's not great, that everyone would know I was a liar, because I was a liar about alcohol. I was lying. I was not telling people what was really going on. I seemed just fine. And I'm one of those people who everyone was like, you don't really drink that much. And it was uncomfortable for me, even, with people really, really close to me, to sort of step into the like, yeah, it wasn't great. And, how I drew that boundary in a way that worked for me was I said to people close to me, I don't really want to tell you the depths of my drinking or its effect on me. I'm going to keep that one for me, but I will tell you it wasn't casual and it wasn't great. And the more I said that, the more comfortable I became. And, I have different messages for different audiences. For people who I know casual, I just say like, I had a great drinking career and then I retired.
Mhm.
You know, that's what I said to my stepkids who I'm really close to. And then they were all like, oh, that's like a hilarious, very you way of saying it. To other people, I was like, yeah, it was not good. It was not cute. And some people I just say, hey, I drank. Turns out it wasn't serving me. I gave it a job. I took his job away. I'm happier without it. So that fear of exposing to people that I had a problem, wasn't comfortable.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting that because I think that we do get stuck sometimes in the fact that we might be labeled or that people are going to assume I was an alcoholic or it was really bad, or they're going to think I probably had a DUI and the truth is that as humans, we do judge other people. And so it's part of human nature. But the other part is that I think there are a lot more people than we realize who are going to cheer us on. And I had an interesting experience recently. I was away at a sober event. It was so much fun. And then I was flying home. And at the event, someone had said, have you ever noticed that people in their 40s, if you tell them they're not drinking, 40s and under, will say, oh, that's so cool. Good for you. But if they're 60 and over, they'll say, did you have a drinking problem? And
Yeah.
I'm not kidding you, Madonna, on the airplane, on the way out, I had a lovely conversation with a gentleman who was probably in his late 30s. And he said, oh, that's so cool. Here's my experience. And on the way back, I sat next to a woman who was in her 60s and she said, did you have a drinking problem?
Yeah, it
And
is, right? We
so,
all have these filters.
yeah, yeah. And so I think we can understand with some compassion and empathy that yeah, people might say an awkward comment, but that's just where they're coming from right now. And I could help be part of their education, perhaps.
I have had no one have a negative response to me. I've had people be really curious. Some people maybe like a little too curious for my taste, but that's fine. But the opportunity, to just say to somebody, yeah, it's just not that big of a deal. I gave it a job. I thought it was handling my anxiety. I thought it was like making me more interesting. And it turns out that just wasn't true. And I don't need to do that. And that's my story. And
Mhm.
when you can bring some lightness to it, I think people really appreciate that. And then people are like, yeah, it turns out I also have this problem. And I imagine you have the same thing, like the amount of women specifically, like 45 and older, who are like, oh, yeah, me too, has been so comforting to me. It's like, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah, and that is one of the biggest points of connection that we can offer on this journey is we aren't alone. When we have other people say, yes, I understand that experience, we can bring it out of that secret shame closet and actually start to explore the parts that felt so uncomfortable. If we find somebody that also was hiding bottles, or if we find someone who was drinking in the car before they drove home from work, or if we find someone who would lie in order to go to an event and drink away from their family or friends, it's just, it's very, it just sort of levels the playing field. Like there's no stories by now that you and I haven't really heard about it, and there's no judgment.
Right.
Alcohol is, a can be a really stern taskmaster. And if we give it too many jobs, we're going to start having alcohol follow us around everywhere, and it's going to have an impact. And, I love the idea of firing the employees. No longer
Yep.
serving me.
Yep.
You are out of here.
You do bad work. I'm not paying you anymore.
That's right. They definitely do bad work. What would you, or how would you describe your life now on the other side of not drinking?
Yeah, it's a weirdly uncomfortable question for me, and I'll tell you because like I am historically not comfortable with wild enthusiasm about anything to do with myself. But the real answer is my life is freaking great. My life is great. I love to see live music. I went to see Macklemore last weekend, who I love. I lived in Seattle for 25 years, and so I love. I was like out of my mind with happiness, singing and dancing and Gen Xing all over the place, and just it was great. I didn't care what I looked like. I didn't care. I didn't have to pre-funk. I didn't have to plan how many trips to the bathroom or to the bar. It was just a great, cool experience. And the longer I go learning about myself, and my journey is about self-acceptance and about self-compassion, the better my life gets. And this isn't to say it's easy. It's not easy because I'm 56, almost 57. And I'm like, why does this hurt? And why does that hurt? And why is my cholesterol here? Because I have a genetic thing. Like, there's just stuff. In fact, I tell people, one of the greatest weird moments of joy for me is that my father passed away this year. And we'd spent a couple of years taking care of him. He was 88, he had Parkinson's. And the last sort of 7 days, hospice was like, wow, this dude is strong. He's not going easy. But that I was able to be there and to be present and to be able to catch myself when I was going into thinking that wasn't going to serve me, to just be there and to not be afraid to spend that time. Try not to look at you so I won't cry.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Was amazing. I would never want alcohol after having that experience. It really kind of put the nail in the coffin of alcohol for me of like, oh my God, I would have been there if I'd been drinking. I would have shown up. I would have done the stuff. I wouldn't have been present. I wouldn't have been in my body. My dad would have felt that distance. I would have been sneaking around. I would have been pouring wine, which in a super acceptable way. So, my life is good because I'm actually in my life. And I wasn't before. And it's a big shift for me.
Mm, that's so beautiful. And it's such a message of hope. Thank you for that. And we spend so much time trying to escape our life and numb from our life and turn our brain off. And when we get to a place where we say enough with alcohol, exactly what you shared, Madonna, is available, is that we can start to love ourselves again. It starts with that self-acceptance that you talked about. It starts with showing up and asking those deeper questions. It starts with exploring, what does it mean to be present? How do I feel about this? What feels hard? What's available to me? What can I learn? And I love this story about your dad, because I often tell people that one of the biggest challenges that I see, and it's not a role I've yet been called to, but is this caregiver role. And there really is a lot of drinking that can show up around that. And when we are in that role and walking someone through the last of their time on earth, and we're really present, it's a gift to them, as you mentioned. It's also a gift to us. And it's a gift, I think, to the greater humanity, not to go too deep, but it feels like we need to honor these stages And it's a beautiful way to honor all of us as
It
humans. That,
is.
yeah.
I just think when you're in it, really in it, life is less scary. Not that it's not scary, not that I don't have moments. I have my moments, but I'm like, I know that I can handle what life throws me. And that is a very different feeling than I had when I was drinking. I felt quite the opposite. And so, life is good. I'm a better wife. I'm a better friend. I'm sure I'm annoying in some ways because I'm actually willing to say what my real feelings are, ask for what I need, but I'm also able and capable of giving so much more. So yeah, life is good.
I love that. I love that from someone who readily admits that you're not necessarily wildly enthusiastic. That's a
Uh,
pretty enthusiastic endorsement, Madonna. I love that. I love that you've arrived at this place.
Thank you. It's a good place to be.
All right. Well, now I want to welcome Debbie Talbert to tell you a little bit about her personal story of how she stopped drinking in her 50s and beyond. And, it's so amazing, Debbie, that you and I both came to this place later in life. And so tell us how old you were when you finally stopped drinking forever.
So when I knew that I was complete with that part of my life, that I was done with alcohol, I was 59.
Ah, yes. And I
Yeah.
think that is so beautiful because, as I have been interviewing women who stopped drinking in their 50s and beyond, I've noticed that many of us thought at some point that it might be too late to quit. Did you ever have that thought?
Oh yeah. My thought because I struggled with I drank from the time I was 18 till I was 59, but it didn't become something that I was struggling with trying to do different and untangle until I was probably 49. Like so after menopause, when all that started to hit, and I started to tell myself all these stories about I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have saved more, I should have planned better, I should have figured this out by now. So, and I had, and then part of that underlying, I'm too old to continue to need help for these kinds of things. Like whether it was my finances, whether it was my fitness, whether it was the alcohol, but I didn't realize that was hidden underneath in the background story, humming in the background, because all of the shoulds were so loud, and I was trying to drown them out with the alcohol. And that started like once I hit 50, like 49, 50. And that's when all of that started.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started relying on it more and more to not have to think about what I thought all the things I had done wrong.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. That's a heavy load, right? And
Right.
one of
That's a heavy load for that thing in the bottle to fix, that liquid in the bottle to fix.
exactly, right? And one of the things that I have come to realize the longer I do this work and looking at my own personal journey is that when we're in midlife, we have a lot of transitions. And you mentioned a couple there, Debbie, starting to think like, I should have arrived by now, right? I should have this all figured out. What's the matter with me? And going through menopause. And so these midlife transitions as women, I see them as part of the reason we get so tangled up in alcohol. And I think the solution is we have to pay attention to that tape that's running in the background, just like you said. So how did you realize that was the tape running in the background underneath all of that?
Okay, well, I tried different avenues for like 10 years. So I tried to set rules, regulations, not drink on layovers, only drink at home, not drink on Friday, whatever. I had all kinds of different rules. None of them worked out. I did go a couple times to AA meetings. I looked up all the time online. Am I an alcoholic? I'd answer the quiz and it would get a no. And I'd like, okay, I don't have to do anything right now. And then I'd stop thinking about it for a little while. And then I'd find I can't keep doing this. And then I'd try something again. Well, after doing that on and off for 10 years of now, all through the journey, I was already doing a lot of personal growth, personal development. So I decided, okay, I'm not going to stop because trying to stop isn't working for me. I'm going to get myself to ask myself every time before I drink, so what do I want from this? I also got myself the next day or a couple days later to really look at what I had wanted, what I got, and started to really understand what was really going on. So that was like my first phase of awareness. And we can't change what we're not aware of, right?
Right.
So that was the first phase of the awareness. But it also, what it did was it interrupted all of the should story in my head and brought me more into being curious about what was really going on for me.
Mm. Yeah, that's such a message of hope. Thank you for that, because what you're saying there, Debbie, it's so powerful, is this idea that we are looking to alcohol for the what we want, our
Right.
discomfort to go away, turn our brain off, make us feel more accepted. And I think a lot of it boils down to this idea that we're so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. We don't have any practice sitting in discomfort. And so alcohol becomes the way that we take all of these midlife transitions and we tamp them down. We make them palatable. And what you said there that is so good, I want to highlight, is this idea of asking ourselves, what do I really want right now? What do I need in this moment? So is alcohol helping me with the pain of caregiving my elderly parent? Is it helping me with my empty nest emotions and feelings? Is it helping me because my spouse and I have become roommates instead of passionate, we're companions instead of passionate lovers? What am I looking for alcohol to do? And you're absolutely right. It's the best question out there.
Right. And really, after I consistently asked myself that, and 3 weeks later, I knew I was done. That was not going to be my answer anymore. Yeah. And I only know, like, I had no idea that, okay, later on in life, 8 years down the road, I was also going to be helping people flip the script in their story about aging and all kinds of stuff, right? So I don't have journals and what my answers actually were. I can reflect now and think about it and understand myself and know. But I also had all along been doing and working with a life coach, and it was a chance encounter with a life coach instead of going to therapy, because I had done therapy, but it wasn't the same kind of focus. And the life coach was helping me with future focus and what did I want for my future. And so really understanding that, I knew that I was done relying on that substance because it wasn't giving me what I wanted. It didn't mean I was done, because I still consider myself 8 when it comes to emotional safety and understanding my emotions. And like you talked about, I'm only 8 years old when it comes to getting myself to be uncomfortable with this, to be comfortable with discomfort, or even getting myself to be in discomfort.
Yeah.
Because I didn't teach myself how to do that.
Yeah.
Until I was 59.
Yes. And you and I share we share a very similar anniversary. I'm going to be 8. I'm going to turn 8 on October 18th. And you're right. We're in the very early stages of learning how, what we might call soft skills, how to set boundaries, how to give ourselves permission, how to listen more than we talk, how to come alongside someone with compassion versus trying to get our own story across, and how to boss our brain around is the way that I like to say it. So yeah, that's so powerful that we are still learning and growing, and we haven't arrived. In fact, I've decided that I don't think we ever really arrive.
I'm just getting started, right?
Yes.
I mean, because my kids are gone. They're not gone out of my life, but they don't live in my house. They're like, the youngest one is going to be 40 next year. So, and they have kids of their own. But yet I still have so much living left to do. And I'm 100% committed to thriving, not just surviving this season of life.
Oh, yep.
So
Yeah, you and I just am so delighted to have this conversation and share it with my listeners, because this really is the place that I believe alcohol can, when we stop drinking and we take alcohol out, we really can arrive at this place where we have this moment. I think about it as creating space. And so I told a story on a podcast earlier, but I'll just reiterate it because I think it's so powerful, that if you think about you're cleaning out your garage and you've got all this junk in your garage and you need to clean the floor. The floor is dirty. You've got to sweep the floor and polish the floor. You've got that concrete, it's all sticky. If you don't move the things out of the way, you're never going to get the floor cleaned. You're just going to sweep around all the junk that's in the garage. And will the garage be clean? Not really. And so I think about this place we arrive at, we take out alcohol, and now we have this beautiful space to polish what we want, to put only the things we want back into the garage. And I don't know if the garage analogy is an American thing or not, or maybe if you live in the East Coast, you have a basement. But to me, I know like there's so much satisfaction that comes from cleaning out the garage and realizing you have created space to do this beautiful work. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Debbie. I think the best is yet to come. And I recently heard that there is this U curve of happiness where after the age of 50, we get happier every decade.
Oh, that's nice. I like that.
Right?
Idea.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is, and you know what you highlight that I think is so important is that this is the work we get to do to have this place where we are thriving.
Ask yourself that one question. It's 5 words. So what do I actually want? And then celebrate yourself and be satisfied with yourself that you ask yourself that question and that you actually took the time to pause and at least ask yourself that.
Yeah,
then you
that's
can
a
move
beautiful place to start. Yeah, it's a beautiful place to start. And it's how we, start to untangle this and get back to who we are always meant to be. So I'm so happy to be celebrating being 8 with you, Miss Debbie Coward. Thanks for being on the podcast. And we'll have to catch up soon.
All right. Thank you, Terry.
All right. Well, now I have the fun and pleasure and delight of talking to my friend, Colleen Clifford. And I'm so excited to welcome you to the podcast and chat a little bit about this transformation that you went through. And maybe even this painful place where we can sometimes feel stuck trying to untangle this drinking in our 50s and beyond. So welcome to the podcast, Colleen.
Hi, thanks. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, so I want to start with kind of this universal question I've been asking my guests around this topic. How old were you when you stopped drinking?
Okay, so I had, this is my second time as a non-drinker. So the first time I stopped, I was 46-ish, something like that. I don't know exactly. And I was a non-drinker for about 2.5 years. And then I started drinking again, and then I stopped. It'll be 2.5 years ago as of now. So May 2019, something like that. I really don't count my days, so it's hard for me. I'm not prepared for that one.
Sure. Yeah, no. And I never counted my days either. I decided I was going to do it forever. So there was no real reason for me to count. So I'm wondering, so you went back to drinking after your first experiment and exploration. I'm sure you learned a lot. Like I always tell the women that come into my world that we don't start over. We start from where we are with new information, new tools, new strategies, maybe understanding things that didn't work. So what's been different this time around for you?
This time around, I know that alcohol will no longer be in my life. Last time, I kept in the back of my mind that maybe I could be an occasional drinker. And so that's how I started again. And actually, some other life events catapulted me into kind of an unhealthy mental space for a while. And I wasn't taking very good care of myself at that point. And so drinking was kind of oh, it makes me feel good, I'm going to start drinking again. And this time, like you, I have come to realize that alcohol just doesn't serve me anymore. And I just don't want to drink it at all.
And you bring up a really interesting phenomenon that I've kind of been focusing on, is that there's a lot of reasons that we end up drinking and over drinking in our 50s and beyond. And a lot of them come up around this midlife. There's so many transitions in midlife. And if we're drinking in our 40s, I feel like that's like might be one of the most challenging stages as a woman in her 40s, going through the stress maybe of working and raising a family, the pressure of striving and arriving and accumulating. And we get through that and we start to enter into our 50s, and we're, premenopausal. So hormones are changing and lots of things are getting layered on. It can be caring for aging parents, thinking about retirement, planning a new career, realizing that maybe our primary relationship is unhealthy. And so we end up kind of in this place in our 50s and 60s where there might be some things to untangle. So I can really understand why when things get painful and there's a lot of moving parts, alcohol can look like the answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did for me.
Yeah. So what were your biggest fears about not drinking?
I think it's my biggest fears were my community and social network. And also that alongside with I'm naturally a quiet person and I do really well one-on-one, but in a group setting, in any kind of group setting, I'm more introverted, and alcohol was, as it is for many, many people, a social lubricant. So it was my security blanket in social settings. And actually, confession, I would drink before a social event so that I could have the courage to go sometimes, especially if I was going by myself. And sometimes I just would back out because didn't want to go because of anxiety of being in a social group. So those are probably my main concerns.
Yeah, and I don't think you're alone. We see that social anxiety doesn't go away in high school. I wish it did sometimes, right?
Right.
Because we still hold on to the stories and the meaning of what it means to fit in versus the beautiful way that Brene Brown phrases it is the difference between belonging and fitting in. And sometimes we get caught up in that fitting in. And again, we go through high school and then we go through the career part of fitting in. And then we go through the keeping up with the Joneses part of fitting in, the house, the spouse, the family, the perfect life on paper. And then we go through the fitting in of what does retirement look like and living our best life. And there's a lot of social pressure. And so, I think that drinking can fall right into that because it helps us maybe feel like we're fitting in.
Absolutely. And you brought up a point with the retirement. I'm now living in a 55 plus community, and my partner and I are one of the few that are still working. And most people are very social, happy hour drinkers. They plan their parties. And and now that I'm a known non-drinker, I realize I'm not maybe getting as many invitations, which is fine. I'm totally fine with that. But it's just learning, okay, who's my tribe around here? I do have a handful, which is great. And that's all that I'm happy with that. I don't need to be friends with everyone in the neighborhood. But it's just interesting to notice how much people start drinking when they retire.
Oh,
And
yeah. Yeah.
it's just kind of interesting. I'm looking at it more as an observation than a judgment, and I'm glad I'm where I'm at. I'm happy to be sober.
Oh
Or
yeah. And I stopped drinking at 55. And I think that's the age, at least in California where I live, like that I could go to a senior living place. And if I had done that, I might have seen my drinking ramp up instead of stop. Because if we think about it, each of these transition brings a layer of accepting who we are and where we are. And so there's, the hierarchy, whether it's the senior living center or the friends that seem like they retired with all of the accoutrements. And I listened to this gentleman recently, Chip Conley, and he talked about, the first 50 years of our life are about achieving and accumulating. And the next 50 years of our life are about minimizing and focusing. And I think it's such a beautiful way to explore how we can thrive after alcohol and how we can belong without needing to fit in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So these fears around where do I fit, were they realized when you stopped drinking? Like, was that a big deal? Or did you find that most of it was just a head game?
Most of it was a head game. Yeah. Uh, yeah. A lot of it's a head game. But yeah, I have lots of friends and family, and I'm doing fine. Fitting
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, I love to ask that question because we think like these excuses or these reasons or this worry or this future forecasting, keeps us sometimes stuck, and we imagine that life's going to be a certain way, and the reality is it very often is nothing like that. It's just our brain trying to keep us in that comfort zone, keep us safe. So I'm curious, what does life look like now that you're not drinking alcohol?
It keeps getting better and better. I just turned 60 this year, in June. Yeah, thank you. And I thought my 50s were great, and my 60s are just, turning the corner. I can't wait for my 60s. Yeah, I'm in the happiest place and healthiest place, I think, than I've ever been. So I don't see myself going backwards. And if I do, it won't be very far. Hard to get back on track, but I just see myself moving forward, and it's just really exciting. I feel very blessed. I'm very grateful where I'm at.
Yeah, I love that because we think that we're going to give up alcohol and we're just going to exist. And the
Mhm.
reality is that no, we create space to actually build the life that fills us up and fuels us. And we end up with passion and purpose and meaning and significance. And every woman I
Right.
talk to really feels that way. But there are some things we need to make sure that we focus on. And I think that, where sometimes the most painful place, and I've mentioned this before, is when someone is what I like to think of as sober but stuck. So we are doing the behavior, but we haven't changed our thoughts around drinking. And so I wonder what has changed for you as far as your thoughts around drinking that has led you to embrace and thrive in this place without alcohol.
Well, I appreciate that question because I knew I had stopped drinking before. I knew I could do it because I had done it. So that wasn't my fear. It was, it was how am I going to live without drinking? And now that I'm not, I'm finding I just have all this time. And now I look at it as, baskets of empty and full baskets. And drinking just is draining my basket of time of it, like I've learned how to play instruments. Just so much time is freed up by not being consumed. Am I going to drink today? How much am I going to drink? Consumed with the actual wasted time of being drunk, because what do we accomplish when we're drunk? And then the hangover the next day because I don't have any energy to do what I was going to do. And so, I mean, I've just blessed myself with all this time to feel good. And even if I do nothing and sit on the couch and I don't know, just space out or read a book, or, I mean, that's doing something, but, it's just with a clear head, and it's just beautiful. I don't know why I will never drink again. Honestly, I really don't think, I'm not really not concerned about it. So I love it. And I
Uh,
love to be an example for my family and friends, and the neighbors even, that, yeah.
I
So
think about that movie with Meg Ryan. Why am I forgetting the name of it? But she is at the restaurant, and there's this humorous scene, and the waitress comes over to take her order or deliver her order, and she's with Billy Crystal. I'm forgetting the name of the movie, but at some point, another woman looks over and says, "I want what she's having." And it really feels like that. We show up and we're living with more joy and intention and purpose, and less anxiety, and less not necessarily less stress, but less stress that is derailing our joy and our purpose. And yeah, people look at us and say, wow, something is different. I want some of that. Yeah, so you are actually becoming a living example, as you mentioned, to your community. And it's part of this trickle down effect of when we stop drinking, of what it feels like to really show up and create this experience for ourselves. So you've gone beyond just living your life alcohol free, and you're actually building a coaching business and incorporating some of your nutritional background and cooking. So tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So I have been a chef over many years. And so now that I'm on this path of health and wellness, I'm putting together some cooking, so part of being healthy, and especially when you're quitting drinking, as you know, and a lot of people do, is just nourishment. Our body's craving healthy nourishment, which alcohol can deplete. And so my focus now is to really encourage people to start cooking at home, because it's very simple with a plan. And if you need a plan, I'm devising plans, weekly plans, and then I'm also recording the weekly plan with a how-to. So basically, you get cooking class plus the weekly menu. And so that's one thing I'm doing. And then just building my business as it happens. I'm still commercial fishing, so I've got that, in my work balance, health coach balance. So, but it's happening and it's exciting, and I really love teaching people how to cook.
Oh, yes. And what's so fun is that you mentioned you turned 60 recently. And when my grandmother turned 60, she was literally the little old lady with the orthopedic shoes who just drove her car to church on Sundays. And here we are in our 60s, and we're building new businesses, and we're challenging ourselves, and we're having new experiences. And it really is such a beautiful place to arrive at, and to realize that life just keeps getting better and better on this side of drinking.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story. It's so fun to see all of the gifts that are showing up in your life.
Thanks, Carrie. I really appreciate you having me on your.
Hey, I want to thank you for tuning in and listening to The Sober Edge. This is a place to have important conversations and a safe place to question everything you thought you knew about drinking. If you're looking for your sober edge, I invite you to connect with me at thesobernutritionist.com, where you can grab my free resource, 5 Healthy Reasons to Take a Break. And I would be grateful if you would take a moment to rate and review this podcast, so together we can reach more people who are looking for their sober edge.